Hello everyone, my name is Morgan and I am an Uncharted fan. Uncharted is my favorite video game series and Uncharted 4 specifically is my favorite game of all time. I have been through it and the rest of the series like at least a million times. The story and the characters mean so much to me, so when I and the rest of the fandom heard that there was going to be an Uncharted movie, we weren't very excited. You see, video game movies and just movie adaptations in general tend to not be the very best. And this is because you're taking the original work, whether that be a video game, a book, a show, and you're condensing it down into a 2-hour film when it's supposed to be this long journey you're going on with these characters. So then the casting came out and we were even less excited. Tom Holland fans, please don't kill me. I am begging you, okay? I'm sure Tom is a great guy and great actor. I don't like superheroes, so I've never seen any of his Marvel stuff. So unfortunately for Tom, this is the only thing I've ever seen him in. It's just when I look at Tom Holland, I don't see Nathan Drake. And I sure as hell don't see Sully when I look at Mark Wahlberg. But I'm not putting all of the blame on the actors, okay? Because they just did the best with the script that they were given. And that script just feels like someone looked at the Uncharted wiki and went, we're gonna use this scene, and this scene, and this scene, and then we're not gonna look at any kind of references to see how the characters actually act. So I thought it'd be fun if today I decided to take you through the Uncharted movie. Honestly, I didn't want to watch this movie, but I thought that it would be fun to make a video like this comparing the movie to the games. I actually first watched this movie back in May of 2022 and planned on making this video then, but then I just got really overwhelmed because I just realized how much I have to say, and then I also realized that I was gonna have to watch the movie a second time to prepare for this video, and I really didn't want to do that. But I'm here now, I'm finally ready. I remember watching my dad play the first game when I was 8, and now I'm 23, so I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp on the characters and the story. I guess you could say that I've been training my whole life for this moment. So something that the movie does a lot is that it will try to replicate scenes from the games. So something that I would like to do throughout this video is compare the scenes from the movie to the scenes from the games, and just sort of show how it's so much more well-written, impactful, interesting in the games. I'd also like to just compare the characters and their relationships. We're just going to be doing a lot of comparing. And again, one last thing before I get started, please, Tom Holland fans, please don't kill me. Okay, please. I'm not trying to insult your idol in any way, okay? It's just that Uncharted is my Tom Holland. What kind of comparison is that? Yeah, you know, your love for Tom, that's me, but with Uncharted. So Uncharted is my Tom Holland. I'm gonna stop rambling now, let's get into the movie. So the movie starts with the iconic plane scene from Uncharted 3. I'm assuming they're trying to mimic the beginning of Uncharted 2, where the game opens with Nate waking up inside of a derailed train hanging off the side of a mountain. But back to movie Nate, he does what he does best, which is punching some dudes and climbing up the cargo to get back inside the plane. Now so far, I don't have a problem with this. What I do have a problem with, however, is this red sports car. I can't tell you why I have a problem with this sports car yet, because it involves something that happens later in the movie, but just know that this sports car and I have beef. So said sports car rolls out of the plane and hits Nate, causing him to fly through the air until a hand reaches out for him, and we're suddenly in a flashback. Child Nate is breaking into a museum with his older brother Sam, who is really struggling to pull him into that window.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Come on. Sheesh, you might.
Okay, this is not me being picky. This is just me wanting to show you how swole young Sam is in the games, okay? Like, oh my god, he just lifted him up like it was nothing. Sheesh, you're like, yeah, but you lifted a whole child with one hand. I'm impressed. Sam's my favorite Uncharted character. Now, movie Nate is freaking the F out and screaming inside the museum that they just broke into. Meanwhile, game Nate is like,
I did it.
this is Uncharted's version of the Light meets Ryuk anime versus movie comparison. And that video cracks me up, so I'm glad we have our own version now. Anyway, Sam gives Nate a piece of bubblegum, which I wouldn't even bother mentioning except for the fact that they try to use it as a sort of through line in the movie, but it just doesn't really work, and you kind of just keep forgetting about the bubblegum until someone takes out some bubblegum. So yeah, this is me mentioning the gum. I guess I'll bring it back up at the end. Okay, so I'm just gonna run through the scene and then I'll give my thoughts on it after. So Sam tells Nate about this guy named Magellan. He claimed to be the first guy to sail around the world, but he was actually looking for some gold and never made it home. Sam thinks that he and Nate can find the gold because they have pirate blood in their veins. Their mom and dad always said that they were descendants of Sir Francis Drake. Nate wonders if their parents are just lost, like the gold, but Sam gets super defensive about it for some reason and is like, they're gone. Sam tries to steal Magellan's map, but immediately sets an alarm off, so not very slick. Then it takes exactly 1 second for the world's most unenthusiastic guards to show up and catch them.
Hey, you two! Don't move!
The police take them back to the orphanage they live in, and the cop is like, yeah, Sam's going to jail. And then they stupidly leave Sam and Nate alone in a room together to say their goodbyes. Sam decides that he's not going to jail, and he's going to run off and leave Nathan behind. Now, Sam is wearing the iconic Sig Parvis Magna ring around his neck, and he gives it to Nate. In the games, Nate stole this ring from a museum in Colombia, so I have no idea how Sam got it. Then Sam up and leaves, and I literally wrote in all caps in the notes I was taking while watching this movie, oh my god, he actually left Nate. Then Nate picks up a blank piece of paper and puts a lighter under it to reveal a message from Sam saying that he loves him. That'll be important later. Okay, so let's unpack this. I'm gonna be comparing this sequence to the flashbacks of young Nate and Sam in Uncharted 4. We're going to start with the fact that Sam and Nate's last name is already Drake, and their parents said that they are descendants of Sir Francis Drake, because this actually is like huge and changes so much about their backstory. So up until this point in the games, they are not Nathan and Samuel Drake, they are Nathan and Samuel Morgan. Hey, that's my name. Their mother was this amazing historian named Cassandra. Cassandra worked with this woman named Evelyn. And after their mom died, Nate and Sam went to Evelyn's house where they found a journal full of their mom's unfinished work. And while there, Evelyn tells them that Cassandra had a theory that Sir Francis Drake had heirs. Not that her family were the heirs, just that he had heirs in general. And Nate and Sam are actually very surprised by this. They've never heard this theory before. Now, I'm skipping over a lot of context here, but Evelyn dies in front of the boys, and then the police show up and think that they killed her. There's this whole chase sequence, and the boys get away, but now they're like, well, what do we do? We're wanted murderers. This is when Sam says,
Mom believed that Sir Francis Drake had heirs. Who's to say he didn't?
They changed their last name to Drake and set off on their journey as treasure hunters together. This is so vastly different from the movie and also has a completely different emotional impact. Now, this is a smaller detail, but in the movie, it seems like their dad died as well, and that they just seem to have a generally positive opinion towards their dad. In the games, their dad is an asshole who dumped them in an orphanage the second Cassandra died, which brings me to the absolute absurdity that Sam would ever leave Nate behind. Sam is all that Nate has, and everything that Sam does is for Nate. At the start of the game, Sam does say that he's going to be going away for a year, but it's because he got a really well-paying job, and that money is to support both him and Nate. After everything with Evelyn goes down, he and Nate run off together, and even if Nate wasn't involved in all this, I still don't think he would have just left Nate. I think he would have brought him with him. And I think this because Sam wouldn't just abandon Nate, especially after their mom died and their dad dumped him in an orphanage where Nate has no friends. And even if by some stretch of the imagination he would just leave, I don't think he'd be no contact like Movie Sam is here. Like, Movie Sam just occasionally sends a postcard to Nate and he's like, hey, how's it going, brother? Game Sam would be sending Nate money and then trying to reunite with him the second Nate got out of that orphanage. I would like to finish this first rant with this quote from Nate.
For a while it felt like if we weren't taking turns going to jail, it was because we were in jail together.
That's right. The two were always in and out of jail, whether that be together or separately. Neither one of them abandoned the other and then never spoke to them again out of fear of going to jail. Back to the movie, it's now present day in New York, and Nate is working as a bartender. He's mixing drinks for this girl and being all fancy about it. I'd like to share what I wrote in my notes here. It says, this guy is too swaggy to be Nate. He's too cool. I wrote that because every time I see him being all like cool and doing all these tricks to mix the drink, all I can think of is Game Nate doing this.
Be careful.
Come on. I always am.
Ah! I did not see that!
Nate ends up stealing a bracelet off the girl, and a guy sees it and calls him out on it. This man is I'm sorry. It's just Mark Wahlberg as Sully scares me. It shouldn't exist. Side note, the amount of times that I accidentally typed silly instead of Sully in my notes is kind of embarrassing. The man introduces himself as Victor Sullivan, but you can call him Sully. He says he's got a big job coming up and he wants Nate to join him. Nate refuses, Sully leaves. Nate realizes Sully stole a bracelet off him and left his business card, so he heads to his place and pickpockets this doorman along the way for his keys. I like how at this point in his life, Game Nate has been on these amazing adventures, and Movie Nate is just the pickpocket. But Game Nate also has significantly more trauma, so maybe Movie Nate has it better. Anyway, inside Sully's place, Nate finds the Magellan map that Sam tried to steal, and then Sully comes out all like, I've been expecting you. Sully reveals that he knew Sam, which as a game fan, I'm like, duh. Of course you knew Sam. I guess 2 years ago, Sam and Sully were working together to find the gold Magellan was after, but then Sam ghosted him. Sully thinks that if they find the gold, they'll find Sam, which makes no sense to me, and I don't even know why Nate would believe this, because what does he think is going to happen? He's going to find the gold, and Sam is just going to be sitting on top of it like, haha, I've been waiting here for you all this time. Nate still says no though, because he's like, my brother sucks and he abandoned me, which like, fair, Movie Sam is kind of a dick. But then Nate goes home and looks through old pictures of Sam and postcards, and then he puts the ring around his neck and calls Sully all happy and smiling like, when do we start? Huh? One minute it's, my brother sucks because he abandoned me. The next it's, yay, when do we start? Let's go find my brother. And from this point forward, he just has nothing but positive things to say about Sam. Like, he just doesn't care that he abandoned him anymore. So let's start the ongoing conversation we're going to have throughout this video about Nate and Sully's relationship. Movie Nate and Sully are drastically different from game Nate and Sully. And I think part of the reason why is because of the polar opposite circumstances in which they met. Also, probably just the writing not being the best, but also the polar opposite circumstances in which they met. Let's go back to Uncharted 3, where we learn how Nate and Sully meet. Now, you may remember me mentioning earlier that Nate found the Sig Parvis Magna ring in a museum in Colombia. That's actually where Nate and Sully's relationship starts. A teenage Nate is breaking into a museum to steal the Sir Francis Drake ring. It just so happens that a young Victor Sullivan is also in the area. You see, Sully is working for a woman named Catherine Marlowe. A real hag, if you ask me. The two also have a bit of a romantic relationship going on as well. Marlowe also wants the ring, and she, Sully, and her men walk in on Nate stealing it. Now, Marlowe is just awful, and she hits Nate, and Sully is disgusted by it. She ends up sending her goons after Nate, and eventually one of them has him cornered. His gun is pointed at Nate. Nate points a gun back, his eyes closed, knowing he has to shoot, but he's scared. He's just a kid. Suddenly, a gunshot rings out. Nate opens his eyes to see that Sully shot the man. He saved Nate. He tells Nate that he's okay, and takes him away. The two get to talking, and Sully's definitely given Nate reason to trust him. So he opens up about his theories about Sir Francis Drake and what he's working on. Nate thinks that Sully wants something out of him, but Sully says that he just wants to take him under his wing. It doesn't take much for Nate to agree, and from this point until the end of the games, Nate views Sully as a father figure. Sully means the world to Nate, and vice versa. Sully actually views Nate as a son.
I hit 40, I figured I was never gonna have a son of my own. Hell, I never wanted one. What the hell do I know about raising a kid? Then you came barreling into my life.
Movie Nate, however, definitely does not view Sully as a father figure. They bicker and fight, and Sully manipulates him multiple times. By the end of the movie, he maybe views Sully as a brother, but I think even that is pushing it. But it makes sense when the beginning of their relationship is nowhere near as heartwarming as it is in the games. Sully pickpocketed him and then manipulated him into helping him by coming up with some BS that if they find the gold, they'll find Sam. That and Sully is just a dick this whole movie. You know you got the relationship wrong when there are people out there shipping Nate and Sully like there's some kind of enemies to lovers trope. That makes me feel dead inside. All right, back to movie Nate and Sully. Sully is telling Nate about an upcoming auction. One of the items up for bid is a cross, which is actually a key that unlocks the chamber where the gold is hidden. So they need to steal it. Nate is like, isn't there supposed to be 2 keys? But Sully's like, oh, it's fine. I already have the other one. That'll come into play later. They plan to have Nate cut the power while Sully steals the cross. Then there's this montage of Nate researching how to cut the power, as well as looking into Sully's past, and he also works out shirtless. This was 100% put in the movie for the Tom Holland fans, okay? Like, this montage lasts probably about a minute, but they made sure to put those shirtless scenes in the trailer for the movie. Nate solidifies his plan and tells Sully all the supplies he'll need, but one of the things is a cat, and Sully doesn't question this and just gets the cat, and then when he finally does ask, hey, what's this cat for? Nate is like, oh, it's for you. You had a sad life. I think you need a cat. What? Why is this in here? Like, this cat is brought up one more time before they forget about it until the very end of the movie. Why would Nate ever get Sully a cat? Like, especially in his line of work where he's constantly like moving all over the place and like doing dangerous things. I don't know, this just felt so random to me. Moving on, they arrive at the auction and have really uncomfortable, awkward banter, which is just an insult to the charming, natural feeling back and forth of the games that I've been like so inspired by and look up to in my own writing. Not saying that my writing is good or anywhere near Uncharted level, but it has inspired me. As they walk in, they see Santiago Moncada, and is that damn sports car? Moncada is basically just a rich guy who wants the cross. It's evident he's supposed to be fulfilling the role of Rafe. Rafe is better. Inside, we're introduced to a woman named Braddock, and she's working for Moncada. Braddock is supposed to fulfill the role of Nadine, but let's be honest, she wishes she was even half as cool, interesting, or badass as Nadine. Seriously, this character just gives me a headache. But we will get to that later. She and Sully have a very brief conversation where they just insult each other, while Moncada sneaks up on Nate while he's looking at the cross. The two get to talking, and Nate just flat out tells him that he's interested in the cross, and then just stares at Moncada like a deer caught in headlights for the rest of the conversation, which probably isn't very good for their cover when Braddock is already suspicious of Sully. Also, before he goes to cut the power, he stops in his tracks and stares into Braddock's eyes before moving on, which obviously makes her even more suspicious, and so she sends her men after him. They start bidding on the cross, but Nate can't cut the power because he's getting beat up by Braddock's men because he was an idiot who blew his cover. Sully has to start bidding on the cross until Nate just jumps onto the lights hanging above the auction. This is enough of a distraction for Sully to put on one of the security guard's jackets and take the cross. He starts to leave Nate behind to deal with the guards, so obviously Nate is like, what the hell? To which Sully replies, there's only one rule in this game. Don't get caught. Not my Victor Sullivan. But by the time Sully makes it to the getaway car, Nate is already inside, so that was short-lived. Nate wants to hold on to the cross, and Sully is like, what, you don't trust me? And Nate's like, well, duh. This brings me back to what I was talking about with Nate and Sully's relationship. Nate has no reason to trust Sully. Up until this point, all he's done is lie to, manipulate, and use him. Game Sully immediately gains Nate's trust by saving him, being nice to him, and taking him under his wing. And while I'm sure Nate didn't tell Sully everything there is to know about him right off the bat, it's obvious their relationship wasn't like this. Sully wouldn't have left Nate to fend for himself with all the guards at the auction. Actually, now seems like a pretty good time to talk about the auction level in Uncharted 4. So the auction sequence in Uncharted 4 is one of my favorite parts of the game. It's just full of action and suspense, and it's so cool. And the best part is that the characters don't blow their cover by being stupid. It starts with Nate and Sam sneaking into the auction through a window that Sully left open for them. These three are also here to steal Cross, but Sully's got some bad news. Someone changed the lot order, and now the Cross is already on the floor ready to be bid on. Now they only have a short amount of time to come up with a plan, but Sam knows what to do.
Jesus, you guys act like you never spend time in prison. If you want something dirty done, then you wait for lights out.
They decide that Nate will cut the power, Sam will steal a waiter's outfit so he can be right next to the Cross when the lights go out, and Sully will stay on the floor to keep his eyes on the prize. Shortly after Nate and Sam set off on their mission, Sully is approached by one Nadine Ross. Sully tells Nate that the two had a run-in the past, but she's not holding a grudge. The two are chatting it up, they seem to be having a good time. They're not immediately suspicious of each other like movie Sully and Braddock. Meanwhile, Nate and Sam are sneaking through back rooms and vents. There's a lot of tension because you'll be crawling through vents and then see these heavily armed guards below you. Eventually, a waiter taking a break walks in on Nate hanging from a wall like a weirdo. Sam takes advantage of the moment though by punching his lights out and stealing his uniform. Back at the auction, Sam arrives in costume and gets in place. Sully and Nadine are still talking. They have no reason to be worried about each other at this point. Sully is also just such a smooth talker, he's a really good actor. Nadine even asks Sully about Nate, and without skipping a beat, he's like, oh, he's retired. That's when an off-screen voice butts into the conversation and it is revealed to be Rafe Adler. Dun dun dun! In the movie, the first time we see Moncada is at the auction and Sully literally points to him and goes, that guy's bad. In the game, the player actually already knows Rafe. You meet him at the start of the game and get to know him, find out he's not the most trustworthy person, and that he's more than a little unhinged. When we see Rafe at the auction, alarm bells are immediately going off in our heads. We know that this guy's bad news because we've already seen what he's capable of. Sully is still playing it cool though, acting totally normal. It isn't until Sully mentions, hey, I noticed someone changed the order, that there's a shift in Rafe's demeanor. And then this happens.
This crowd didn't get rich by playing fair.
Which is why you really need someone watching your back in a place like this.
I love this so much, okay? All Nadine has to do is say that one line and move to stand next to Rafe, and the player and Sully immediately are like, ah, you're working together. Again, the movie just has Sully straight up point at Braddock and go, she bad. Right after this, Rafe slaps Sully's drink out of his hand and starts asking him how he found out about the order change, showing us how unhinged he is again and cluing us in that he's the one behind it. The game doesn't tell you who the bad guys are. It lets you figure it out with the characters. Another example of this is Harry Flynn in Uncharted 2. When he betrays Nate, he betrays you as well. Now, Lazarevich, for example, we know is bad ahead of time, but the first time we actually see him is when he's ruthlessly killing someone and we go, oh, that's why he's bad. Moncada and Braddock, I don't know why they're bad aside from them wanting the same cross. What's their deal? What makes them evil? You don't find this out until 40 minutes into the movie. Anyway, Nate makes it to the power room, but there's a locked door between him and the breaker. The auction is starting and Sully has to start a bidding war with Rafe to keep him from getting the cross, while the player controls Nate frantically searching for something to break open the door, and through your earpiece you can hear the bids getting higher and higher as Sam and Sully start to panic. The crowbar you use to open the door is in a different place every time you play the game, so this part always stresses me out. Eventually Nate breaks through the door and is ready to kill the power. Sully messes with Rafe by bowing out of the bid, letting him think he won before saying,
Okay, let's ruin this asshole's evening.
The lights go out, Sam steals the cross, and chaos ensues. Security's going crazy, and everyone has to find a way out. You can play this section in one of two ways. You can be stealthy and hide from all the guards, or you can go in and just start punching dudes. Or if you're me, you try to be stealthy, but then you get caught and have no choice but to start punching dudes. At some point, Nate accidentally runs into Nadine, and I actually think he plays it off pretty well and doesn't give her the deer in headlights look. Nadine already knows what's up and who you are at this point though, and kicks your ass. Seriously, Nate gets his ass handed to him, and she throws him out of a window, showing just how much of a threat this girl's going to be. We don't really get this with Braddock, we just kind of see her in the background of this one shot punching some guys. Really, her goons did all the work in this scene. Nate meets up with Sam and there's a big shootout until Sully arrives in a getaway car and they drive off. The auction scene is over and done with in 10 minutes in the movie. But in Uncharted 4, because it's a video game, they're able to really build the tension for a while until the cross gets stolen and all hell breaks loose and you're in the middle of a crazy shootout. The bad guys are revealed in interesting ways, and best of all, the characters aren't idiots who blow their cover. Anything that does go wrong isn't due to the characters being stupid, it's due to believable things like a waiter going on break, Sully accidentally revealing information to the wrong person, or Nate running into Nadine, who already knows what's going on now. And best of all, Sully didn't betray Nate and Sam. Speaking of the betraying Sully though, why don't we get back to him, because he and Nate are on their way to Barcelona. On the plane, Nate is looking through the captain's journal, which confirms that Magellan found gold in the Philippines, hid it in Barcelona, then told the Moncada family that he didn't find anything. So I guess that's why our old pal Santiago is like, that gold is mine. Then Sully berates Nate for not being able to figure out anything more from the journal than he did. Who is this man, and what did he do with my Sully? The two meet up with Chloe Fraser because she is the one who has the other cross, aka the second key to the treasure. Now this is not me dissing the actress in any way, because she's not bad. She did the best with what she was given. The problem here is the script, because I really don't think the writers know who Chloe Fraser is. But lucky for you guys, I do. Chloe is a badass, confident queen, okay? She is smart, she knows what she wants, and she knows how to get it. I don't get the same vibes from movie Chloe as I do game Chloe. Everything about the way Chloe carries herself and acts in the games is different than the movie. Not only that, but in the movies, they made Chloe out to be a villain who betrays Nate multiple times. In Uncharted 2, she works as a sort of double agent. She's working with Nate while also pretending to work with the bad guys, Lazarevich and Flynn. There is a period of the game where Nate doesn't 100% have Chloe's back, and that makes her feel conflicted and betrayed. She isn't sure what she's supposed to do, but in the end, she still works to keep Nate safe and wants him to succeed. Not only that, but Chloe is actually a pretty caring person. Multiple times throughout the series, we see her concerned for, protecting, and helping her allies. In Uncharted 3, after Charlie breaks his leg, Chloe's like, what are we doing? Why don't we just stop? It's not worth it. Even in the moment where she might seem kind of heartless for trying to leave the dying Jeff behind, it's because she's trying to protect Nate. Also, it's just Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for the input, Jeff.
She's also actually pretty mature. Her and Nate are in a relationship in Uncharted 2, but by the end of the game, she realizes that Elena is the one that Nate truly loves. She doesn't get mean or spiteful about it, but instead tells him that it's okay and encourages him to tell Elena how he feels before walking off with this iconic line.
But admit it, you're gonna miss this ass.
I can't see the same maturity coming from movie Chloe, but that could be because she's constantly betraying everyone around her, including the people that treat her well. I also find it a little weird that they decided to put Chloe in this movie, the girl that Nate has a flirty relationship with in one game, rather than Elena, his future wife, like the main girl in the series. But like, also, I'm not mad about it because then I didn't have to witness them butcher best girl Elena. So Chloe's basically like, no, F you, I'm not working with you two, and walks off. But she stole Nate's cross, and Sully is yelling at him like, how could you let this happen? You're so stupid. This is such a rookie move. But Sully, you were standing there too. This is just as much your fault. Nate chases Chloe and they're jumping across buildings and stuff, and Nate is just a little too badass. Game Nate has been climbing buildings and jumping across stuff his whole life, but movie Nate has been working as a bartender up until now, so I don't know how he's able to just do all this. Eventually, Nate and Sully get in front of Chloe's car as she's trying to drive away and convince her that she won't know where the keys go without them, and she agrees. Through details in the captain's journal that I won't subject you to, they discover the keys go in this church and decide to check it out the following day. Meanwhile, at Moncada HQ, Papa Moncada tells Baby Moncada that he is going to give his fortune away instead of giving it to him. Then Braddock shows up and is ordered to look into Sully. Back to Nate's gang, Chloe figures out that Nate is Sam's brother and asks Sully if he's going to tell him what happened, but Sully is like, and then wonders about his cat that hasn't been brought up until this point. Back to the Moncadas, Papa Moncada gets killed by Braddock and Baby Moncada. The next day, Nate's gang is at a church looking for where the keys go. Nate sees some postcards and realizes that one of them is the same as one Sam sent to him. He goes to tell Sully, but then decides against it, which to me, again, just shows that these two aren't very close, and they don't ever get closer. Eventually, they find where the keys go, and Nate asks Sully to read the journal and tell them which way to turn them. Sully apparently can't read the journal without his glasses though, so he just guesses and tells them clockwise, which sets off a booby trap that almost gets him killed, and then he yells at Nate for turning it the wrong way, even though Sully was the one who told them to turn it that way. Turning the keys the right way reveals stairs leading down. The journal tells them that one person has to go downstairs with one cross, while the other stays above ground with the other cross. Nate decides to go down with Chloe, which results in Nate and Sully arguing about trust. You know, the usual. Nate asks for Sully's phone, and we find out that Sully has Tinder.
Tinder? Really? I own that.
Nate is also like, oh, Sully, you have so many apps open, which I don't know, I think it's just kind of funny that they make Sully bad with technology in the movie, when I actually think that Sully might be better with technology than Nate in the games.
How do you make it go?
Push the start button.
Nate puts an app on Sully's phone that works as a tracker, so when he's above ground, he'll be able to track where Nate and Chloe are below ground and keep up with them. This is my least favorite part of the movie, so let's just get through it quickly. If you've ever played Wii Party, this section of the movie is just the minigame Teamwork Temple, but a lot less fun. Nate and Chloe do something below ground, but before they can progress, Sully has to do something above ground. This part is just so boring though, because while Nate and Chloe are doing stuff below ground, Sully is just wandering around, looking at his phone, tracking them. There are so many cool puzzles in Uncharted, and this is what you went with. A puzzle where Sully has to be staring at his phone the whole time. This part goes on for so long too, so I'm just going to talk about the most notable parts. The first being that Nate and Chloe just find a whole club underground. Why is this here? How do you even get into this club? How has no one in this club stumbled upon this ancient puzzle, especially in their drunken state? I'm confused. At one point, Sully walks into a Papa John's. I kid you not, it is a literal Papa John's. This is product placement to the extreme. And then in the middle of the Papa John's, there's a huge display showcasing where Sully's key has to go. Then Braddock shows up because she's been following him and she has a gun pointed at him, and Sully disarms her like one of those Detroit survival training videos.
Don't move. You move, I'll shoot.
They start fighting, and this is the point where I remember that Braddock is the movie's version of Nadine. So this is basically Nadine and Sully fighting in the middle of a Papa John's, and I can't believe this is real. Towards the end of this long section, Sully has to drop his cross down to Nate so he can combine it with his cross to unlock a door. And Sully just throws a huge fit and is like, I don't trust anyone. I will yet again ask, who is this man? And what did he do with my Sully? Behind the door, there isn't any treasure, but there is a map leading to where the treasure is. Chloe pulls a gun on Nate and demands that he hands over the map. Like I said, they make Chloe a villain in this movie, and this is where that starts. She tells Nate that he should ask Sully what really happened to Sam and then knocks him out. Also, throughout this entire scene, you can hear Sully yelling through the tracking app in the background, "What's going on? Guys, what's happening?"
What's happening? What is it? Hey, tell me what's happening. Answer me, guys. What do you got?
Shut up, Sully. Nate wakes up and Sully is there. He asks him about Sam, and Sully admits that when they were looking for the captain's journal, Braddock showed up and killed him. So if Braddock has been involved in all this for that long, that means that the second Sully and Nate walked into that auction, she knew what they were there for. This just adds a whole new layer of stupidity to these characters in the auction scene. Anyway, Nate is understandably upset, but then he says that Sully strung him along with the hope of seeing Sam, to which I will again ask him, did he think Sam was just going to be sitting on top of the treasure waiting for him? Nate says that he's done with this and Sully and leaves. I sound like a broken record at this point, but this is just not Nate and Sully. It is two totally different characters with two totally different personalities. They just happen to share the same name, because Sully would never do this to Nate. Now this whole section lasts just shy of 20 minutes. This is 20 minutes of Sully just wandering around looking at his phone while Nate and Chloe do stuff. And then when Sully is finally done tracking them through his phone, he spends the rest of the 20 minutes yelling down to them, asking what's going on.
What's happening? What is it? Hey, tell me what's happening. Answer me, guys. What do you got?
But he did get to take part in the Papa John's throwdown, so I guess there's that. So it turns out Chloe is working for Moncada, and he's going to have her lead the operation to find the gold now, which doesn't seem to make Braddock too happy. Meanwhile, Sully is begging Nate to keep helping him by telling him that they can't let Braddock win. Nate says that all this time he's been hoping his brother is alive, but instead he's stuck here with Sully. Considering the game Sully actually treats Nate really well and never lies to or betrays him, I don't think Nate would have any issue being stuck with Sully. But nonetheless, Nate agrees to finish what they started, but after that, they are donezo. So Moncada and his men are loading a bunch of cargo onto a plane because they're getting ready to fly to where the treasure is. Moncada is staring at his shiny red sports car when Chloe approaches him. He tells her it's okay to feel conflicted, but she made the right choice. Nate and Sully are nearby watching everything before they say, okay, let's go, and the scene ends. So we don't know exactly what their plan is at this point. Once the plane is in the air, Moncada is talking to everyone about how long ago some explorers found some treasure and then hid it from his family, and that treasure belongs to him. Then Braddock walks up to him and slits his throat and he dies. Yeah, Moncada is just dead now. The big bad guy we've been building up this whole time, gone, dead. Which means we are now left with Braddock as the main villain of the story. Braddock. Look, I didn't think Moncada was particularly interesting or anything, but he was definitely better than Braddock. Moncada at least had motive for wanting the treasure. He thought that it belonged to his family. All we know about Braddock is, well, nothing. And we don't ever learn anything about her later in the movie either. She wants the treasure just because. This would be like if Nadine killed Rafe halfway through Uncharted 4. I like Nadine and she's definitely more interesting than Braddock, but Rafe is the one with the motive for wanting Avery's treasure. He is the one built up as the villain from the start. Killing him off would be stupid. But that's what the movie did. They killed off their Rafe. Anyway, Chloe saw all this go down and she slips away, but I don't really know how when she was standing right in front of them. Braddock and her men notice she's gone though and go after her. We now see the red sports car and Nate and Sully climb out of the trunk. This is why the sports car bothers me so much, because I have to know, how did they get in there? There were men surrounding this sports car when it was outside and when they went to go get in it. So how did they do it? How did no one see them climbing in? Not to mention this trunk, it's small. They definitely had to squeeze in there because they had to squeeze out. So you're telling me that no one saw Nate and Sully walk up to the sports car and squeeze into the trunk? It bothers me so much. Why didn't they show us how they did it? Because I need to know. It's not adding up. They get out of the car and grab some parachutes to jump out. I don't know how to describe this because I don't know how planes work, but the plane is like open because they were planning on dropping their cargo before they landed. When Nate and Sully get there, they have to hide from Braddock and her men trying to hunt down Chloe. Nate sees Braddock and is like, grrr, and Sully's like, no, now's not the time. Nate doesn't listen though, and he jumps out in front of her and goes, hey, did you kill my brother? I'm sorry, but this actually made me laugh when I saw it the first time. Hey, did you kill my brother? That's what you decided to go with, Nate? You already know that she did. Sully goes flying out of the plane in his parachute, and then Nate, Braddock, and her men start fighting each other while cargo falls out of the plane. Nate gets caught in some cargo and flies outside, and we're back to the opening scene of the movie. What we didn't see at that time though is that Chloe had been captured, and now she's starting to fight everyone. She eventually jumps into the sports car and starts driving it out of the plane and hits Nate. Nate is falling but lands on the car, and Chloe is just flying through the air in the car, and it looks really weird. She climbs out and is like, come on! And they fly through the air to this cargo box with a parachute on it, and they glide down into the ocean. As they float through the ocean, Nate forgives Chloe for some reason, but then asks why she's working with Braddock of all people, and Chloe's like, well, you two are gonna screw me over anyway. And Nate goes, hey, I'm not Sully. To which Chloe says, thank God, one is bad enough. Why do they make everyone hate Sully in this movie? Like, I would love to hang out with Game Sully.
He must be a real hit with the ladies.
Never had any complaints.
Ew. Not that way. The two wash up on a resort shore, and we've reached the best part of the movie, because who is on that beach? Nathan Drake himself, Nolan North. Now, if you don't know anything about Uncharted, Nolan North is the voice of Nate. But not only that, all the Uncharted games are mocapped, so he acted out everything Nate did in the series. So yeah, literally Nathan Drake. Nolan asks what happened to them, and Nate says that they fell out of a car that fell out of a plane, and Nolan goes, you know, something like that happened to me once. And that's it, that's the whole scene, but it's the best part because Nolan North. They get a hotel room and Nate tells Chloe that he thinks Sam left him a clue in all the postcards he sent him over the years about the exact location of the treasure. They go through them, trying to figure it out, but eventually Chloe goes to bed. Nate thinks to hold the postcard over fire like he did at the very beginning of the movie, and it reveals a message telling him to use the crosses as a compass. He does this and it reveals the location of the treasure. He writes some coordinates down and then goes to bed. Chloe gets up before him though, and takes the coordinates and is like, later loser, so she's back to being a villain. But it turns out Nate knew that she'd do this and left her fake coordinates, and he heads out with the real ones. He's on a boat navigating with his phone to the gold, and all I can think of when I see this is Game Nate going, hey, you know what never loses signal? Paper.
Hey, you know what never loses signal? Paper.
Braddock sees him though and starts to follow him, so she knows where the treasure is now too. Nate finds Magellan's ships and runs into Sully on board. I guess Sully still had that tracking app open from before and followed him there. Anyone else shocked by how amazing the reception is in the middle of the ocean? They find the gold and Sully's like, woohoo, yeah, I'm rich. And Nate yells at him for being a selfish jerk. You know, the usual. But then Braddock shows up and they hide below deck. Her and her men hook the ships up to helicopters and just carry them away, which seems like kind of a reckless thing to do with historic ships that are hundreds of years old. Sully and Nate are like, oh crap, did you see what I did there? Anyway, they just start beating up everyone on the ship that they're on, and then Sully hijacks the helicopter. Braddock and the other people on the ship notice, and they start ramming helicopters and ships at each other, which again, seems like a bad thing to do with historic ships that are hundreds of years old. Then there's this random slow motion shot where Nate is falling through the air. I don't know why they did this, because nothing really cool is happening here. And honestly, I think it ruins the flow of the scene. I think the pacing would have worked a lot better without this, but what do I know? Nate shoots a cannonball at the other helicopter, and as it goes down, Braddock jumps onto their ship and drops the anchor. This is holding them down, and the gold that Sully took falls out of the helicopter and is hanging on the edge, so he's trying to reach for it. Meanwhile, Nate is hanging off the side of the ship with Braddock right behind him. Sully has to decide whether he wants to save the treasure or Nate, so he takes the treasure and throws it at Braddock, and she falls into the ocean. Sully helps Nate into the helicopter, and then the ship falls on Braddock, crushing her. She's probably dead. I'm assuming they were trying to mimic Rafe's death in Uncharted 4, but it just doesn't have the same weight. You see, for Rafe's entire life, he's had everything handed to him on a goddamn silver platter. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna quote his entire monologue as much as I would love to. Avery's treasure is the one thing in his life that he's worked for all on his own without the help of his rich parents. He feels that he's earned it. All of it. I just did it again. Anyway, that's when Nate says, you want the treasure, Rafe? It's all yours, and drops it on his head. Yeah, Braddock has the treasure dropped on her head, but that's it? Where's the backstory, the spice, the motive that becomes her downfall? Has Braddock had everything in her life handed to her on a goddamn silver platter, and now she feels that she's earned it? All of it? I don't know. I don't know anything about Braddock, and now she's dead. Nate thanks Sully for saving his life, and as they fly away, they look down and see Chloe on a boat and are like, LOL. Then Nate shows Sully that he had some of the gold in his pockets, and Sully's really excited. Then Nate gives him a piece of gum, you know, like he'd share with his brother. That through line I was talking about at the start of the video. Well, Sully takes the gum, and then he throws it into the ocean. The way my jaw dropped when I saw this, how could he do that? This is why I hesitate to say that Nate even views Sully as a brother. The two fly away and the title Uncharted is shown on screen, but the movie's not over yet. Unfortunately, please help me. We're shown a prison, and inside one of the cells, Sam is writing a postcard to Nate. I don't know how Sam goes from being shot by Braddock in a jail. Like, I know actual Sam was shot and in prison for 15 years, but that's because Sam was already in prison when he was shot, and now they're forcing him to pay for the crime that Rafe committed. Then there's this scene where Nate is meeting with some guys, and he mentions a Roman, which makes me worried. Please don't do a sequel. I mean, period. Please don't do a sequel. But please don't do an Uncharted 1 sequel. Sully shows up, he's got a mustache now, and then they point guns at the guys and back away. Sully's got his cat in his bag. Yeah, remember the cat? He carries it with him everywhere now, I guess, which just seems like an irresponsible pet owner to me. Like, you're gonna get your cat killed in your line of work. They turn around, their eyes widen, and Nate goes, oh crap. The credits roll and Nate's theme plays, and I'm offended. How dare you play Nate's theme after that? Okay, let's quickly talk about Sully's mustache. I have no proof that they went back to film anything in this movie, but the fandom has speculated on it. The reason being, when they first revealed Mark Wahlberg's Sully before the movie came out, one of the main things everyone was talking about was that he didn't even have his mustache. Now, Sully's mustache is not some symbolic thing he grows over the course of the series. It's just that he's always had it. And to us, not giving that to him showed that they weren't even, like, trying to get Sully's appearance right or anything about him right. And now there's this scene at the end of the movie that just feels kind of tacked on where he's got a mustache and Nate even points out, hey, you've got a mustache. I don't know. I'm not the first person to talk about this. A lot of people have speculated about it, so I thought I'd just mention it. Okay, so there's a few things in my notes that I didn't get a chance to address, so we're gonna speed through them. I mean it. I promise we're gonna go quick. Number one, Nate is too much of a saint in this movie. Is Nate a bad person? No, but he does some not so great stuff throughout the series. We're talking about the guy who lied to his wife that he was going on a work trip, but was actually searching for Henry Avery's treasure. I just can't see movie Nate doing that. He's too nice. Two, everything is too easy for Nate. There's really no challenge for him. He just sort of comes up with the answers, things fall into place for him. Another example of this being in Uncharted 3, after the plane scene, is followed by Nate wandering through the desert for days and nearly dying. But in the movie, he just washes up on a beach resort after floating in the ocean for a few minutes. Next, Nate and Sully don't really work together very much. For a movie trying to build the relationship of Nate and Sully, they're hardly together. When they are working together, they're usually in separate locations, and for the entire middle part of the movie, it feels more like Nate is working with Chloe than Sully, and also there's a huge gap in the movie where Sully's just missing and then shows up again. And finally, Nate and Sully fight only to work together 2 seconds later. That one's pretty self-explanatory, but also they never, like, resolve their issues. The whole movie, they're just fighting and bickering about trust and Sam, and there's never a resolution. Sully just saves Nate at the end of the movie, and then he's like, yay, I'm gonna work with you forever. So yeah, that's the Uncharted movie. I hope throughout this video I did a good job of comparing the movie to the games and just showcasing how amazing and well written the games are and just all the heart and soul that is put into them. But honestly, I would never be able to talk about all the amazing things in the games, so if you haven't played them before, I highly recommend either playing them yourself or watching someone play them because they're just so good. Most fans weren't very excited when this movie was announced because we knew this would be the result. And Nate and Sully were the only similarities between them and their video game counterparts are their names. A story that doesn't have that Uncharted touch to it. And the overall feeling that you're just watching an actually pretty boring action movie rather than the feeling of going on an adventure with Nate in the games. If video game adaptations are going to be made, I don't think a movie is the way to go. I think you need something longer, like the new Last of Us TV show. I heard really great things about that. I think the only way an Uncharted adaptation would work is if it was something longer, like a TV show. Or, you know, maybe sometimes video games should just be left video games. Also, this is a side note, but Tom Holland fans, can we please have, like, our tags back? Any social media that has allowed me to block the Tom Holland tag, I do it because I'm just trying to look at Uncharted fan art, but instead I'm getting Peter Parker ex-reader fanfiction, and like, that's not even remotely related. But yeah, anyway, I hope that there's no sequel to this movie because I know that I will inevitably force myself to sit through it so I can make another video. This was fun to make though, so if there's another video like it you would like me to make, if that made sense, let me know. I mentioned the bad Death Note live action at the start of this video, so if you want me to torture myself by sitting through that again, I will. That could be a fun one to tear apart. If you did enjoy this video, please like and subscribe. This video took forever. And with that, I'm finally going to shut up. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!
Hey, you two! Don't move!